All right, last week, Family Research Council's Center for Biblical Worldview released the results of an extensive survey on the views of adult churchgoers in America on social issues and worldview. We talked about some of this last week, but there's just so much to deal with. We just wanted to dive deeper into it. And so we have joining us now the director of FRC's Center for Biblical Worldview, David Closson. And we want to dive further into it. So, David, thank you so much for joining us. As always, it's an honor to have you on the program.
Hey, thanks for the invitation to be back, Jody. Great to be with you.
Well, likewise, and I just heard there are a lot of people who are interested in the conversation we had late last week, and so we felt like we needed to continue this. So the survey that we're talking about, there were several questions that dealt with the life issue, and that's where I want to focus our attention today if we can. What stood out to you from the survey regarding life?
Yeah, great question, Jody. And again, one of the things I think that's so insightful about this survey is that unlike maybe other national polls that will just ask a lot of people questions and then ask if they identify as a Christian, we actually wanted to know what the devout churchgoers of this country actually believed. And so you had to actually attend church to be included in the survey. And of those who took our survey, 72% attend weekly and the other 28% attend monthly. So again, this is giving us real insight into what the nation's most devout churchgoers believe about a whole host of issues. Specifically, we ask a lot of questions, like you said, about life and the value of life and abortion. And so I think a couple things briefly, Jody, that stood out to me is that when we ask people where do they get their views on life, where do they decide where they stand on abortion, 71% of Christians told us that it was their moral and religious beliefs that primarily influenced how they thought about the issue of abortion. 11% of people said they thought about it primarily as a political or policy issue. 11% additionally said that they kind of took their cues from public opinion. 8% admitted that they didn't know where they were getting their influence on the question. But again, 71% of regular churchgoers said it was their moral and religious beliefs that primarily guided them. And another thing I'll give you, Jody, is how many of folks told us that they desired for their church to actually address this issue in a Sunday morning service. It was actually 70% of people told us that they desired additional teaching from their pastor or for their leaders. Of that 70%, 44%, so again, 44% of devout churchgoers said it was very desirable for them to receive additional instruction from the pulpit and from their leaders on how to think about the life issue.
Well, that's stunning information, and we have so many different issues, David, that we're dealing with, from marriage issues now to transgender issues to, even economic issues that are addressed in the Bible. There's so many different issues out there, but probably the centerpiece is life. And what it sounds to me, what I'm hearing, is that the majority of these active churchgoers are basically saying that their pastors are not addressing even the issue of life. Is that reading too much into this, or are they not addressing it enough? How would you describe this scenario?
I think the second part, the way you put that, Jody, is maybe they're not addressing it enough. So again, we ask, how often in the last 12 months have you heard a sermon about abortion or the value of human life? And when it came to evangelicals, 41% of evangelicals specifically told us that they had heard a sermon in the last 12 months on the abortion issue. And so go back to the stat I just gave you, Jody. If, again, 71% of regular churchgoers say that their conscience and the way they think about abortion is primarily formed by the church, and yet only 41% of evangelical pastors are regularly preaching on it, not even regularly, just once a year, to me that shows that a huge segment of evangelicals, they desire the church to teach them about abortion and the value of human life, but they're not getting it. So again, some are doing it and doing it well, but many are not. And again, as someone who has studied this issue deeply, you know, the Bible could not be more clear, whether it's Luke 1, Psalm 139, there's a thus saith the Lord on the value of the unborn person. And again, people are around the country, Jody, who regularly go to church. They are hungry for this instruction.
Yeah, and is it fair to say, it sounds to me like these same people would be saying, not just the issue of life, we want to hear a biblical worldview taught from the pulpit. What does the Bible have to say about the issues of our day? Again, is that reading too much into this survey? I know we're specifically talking about the issue of life, but it sounds to me that from the response of these people, they want to know how biblically to respond to the issues that are happening in our culture, including life, absolutely, but they want to know, what does the Bible have to say to me about how to be a Christian and how to respond in the midst of turbulent times?
No, Jody, you're absolutely right. So 2 stats I can give you from the survey is there's actually 79% of these regular churchgoers, so almost 8 out of 10 told us they wanted more biblical worldview instruction on social and political responsibility. So almost 80% specifically saying they actually want more widespread, deep, robust biblical worldview training on social and political responsibility. And on another issue you just mentioned, that the number actually is 68%. So again, almost 70% saying that they desired their church to teach more on the sexuality issues. Which again, you don't have to, it doesn't matter where you get your news from today, Jody. We know that these issues are being talked about all over the place in the public square. And so again, one of the encouraging things from this survey for me was how many devout Christians are really just crying out. I view this survey almost as a plea from churchgoers, Jody, that they want more training. They're grateful for the training that they've been receiving, but they really want more training on how to biblically think through the issues that they're dealing with in the public square.
All right, we're talking with David Closson, FRC's director of the Center for Biblical Worldview. All right, David, let me ask you this, and we got to wrap up, just over a minute or so to go. We don't want to just identify weaknesses in the church. All right, we want to come to the table and provide some solutions as well. So what are some of the resources that the Center for Biblical Worldview has produced to help both pastors and church attenders, but to help pastors preach about the life issue and other issues, and to help the church attender have a solid biblical worldview?
Yeah, definitely. So again, Jody, things about this survey are encouraging. I think one stat I wanted to make sure I said is that 63% identify as pro-life, 22% identify as pro-choice. So again, I think there's evidence that Christians are thinking biblically about these issues, and we want to help with that. So if you go to frc.org/worldview, we have a biblical worldview series that addresses political engagement, religious freedom, human sexuality. Introduction to Worldview is the latest installment in that series. You can view all of these for free in PDF form online. It's, I think, $2 for a paper copy if a church wants to get some. So frc.org/worldview, all the resources that FRC Center for Biblical Worldview has produced to try to help all of us think together more biblically about all of these issues.
Thank you so much, David Closson, Director of FRC's Center for Biblical Worldview. Great survey, great information, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Jody.